Okay, so this is the painting that we're going to do today. This is a fun little technique that I've been really enjoying working with the last few days. It is a palette knife abstract sort of technique, and then we go in and add details on top. So it's going to be a really fun little just experiment. It's fun to kind of work with the colors this way. This is another example. We're not going to paint this one today, but we're going to paint this one. And so, like I was saying before, if you have some table salt around, that will be helpful for the texture here that we're going to use. And then if you do have liquid watercolors, so the watercolor paints that come in tubes like this, or gouache would work well for this as well if you have gouache, and a palette knife, that'll be helpful. If you don't, you're just going to use concentrated versions of these colors with a brush and put them on there. So if you don't have any of this, that's okay. You will still be able to do the watercolor painting. Okay. My YouTube channel, I saw a question about that. It is linked in my bio. It's not the same handle, unfortunately, but if you go to my link tree and scroll down, you'll get taken right to my YouTube channel. So we have our paper here. I'll go over my materials quickly so that since there's always questions. This is Strathmore watercolor paper here. It is 9 by 12, and then I've taped out, I think this is like a 7 by 9 piece size paper. And then my brushes are Princeton Neptune here. And then I've got one of Christy Rice's Joy of Painting detail brushes that I'll use for the details. And then I've got my Winsor&Newton watercolor paints. So I've got the solid versions here, which we'll use in the detail section of this painting, and then I've got the liquid versions. The colors that I've picked out for today are cadmium yellow, which is this sort of golden yellow color here, indigo, which is a really dark blue, and then sap green, which is this kind of yellowish green here. So we're going to use those three colors only today. We're just going to do a limited palette. So these don't have to match mine exactly, but if you have a yellow, a green, and a dark blue, that's what I would like you to pick out. Okay. And then, like I said, this will be uploaded to my YouTube afterwards, so I will try to go at a pace that works for everybody. I can't always guarantee that because I can't see you, and I also have to get through this in about an hour, so I will be moving on at a good pace. But if you miss any details or if you miss any steps, you can always go back and watch it on my YouTube channel. It's sap green. You can see that close up there. Sap green, indigo, and cadmium yellow. Cadmium-free yellow, but it's the same. Okay, so the general idea, if you do have a palette knife and these liquid watercolors, or just a butter knife would work as well. The idea is that we're going to cover the entire paper with water, and then we're going to load these colors onto our palette knife and then just kind of scratch them around to create a general sort of forest scene. There's going to be no detail involved in that. We're going to put some salt in there and then let it dry. And then whatever it kind of comes out as, we're going to add details on the top. So this is a lesson in kind of letting things go where they will, and then you kind of make something out of it afterwards. It's kind of like those ink blot tests where you have to make something meaningful out of just random shapes. So it's kind of a fun little experiment. So whenever you're ready, grab a large brush. And and the note is, if you're using just the regular watercolors like this, just mix up some really, really dark, really saturated versions of each of these colors. Each of the three colors that you're using, put some water in there and really scrub in there with your brush. Get some really saturated piles of those colors made. Okay, so whenever you're ready, you can do this part first and then do that. So we're going to put some water onto our paper here. And the key that I found is to really make sure we have a really good layer of water on this paper here. So we're really going to cover it with water, and then we're going to let it soak, and then we might add a little bit more water even, just so that we have plenty of water to work with on the paper. Okay. So after you've covered your paper with water, just go ahead and let it sit. And then if you're working with the pan watercolors, this is now the time for you to get some really concentrated color out of there. And if you're working with the liquid watercolors, now is the time to put some on your palette knife. So I'm going to start with the yellow. And I'm just going to put just a little bit. You really don't need a ton for this technique. So just a little tiny bit on the end of my palette knife there. Then I'm going to switch to the green. I'm going to put that on there just a little bit and kind of spread it out. And then put the indigo on the very end. I dropped a little bit in there. Okay. So something like this, and then as we go, we will probably reload this to add a little bit more color, but this will be good for a start. And if you're just using the concentrated watercolors out of your pans, you will just put those colors in here individually. Okay, so whenever you're ready, you can always watch me do this first, and then you can follow because there will be a lot of waiting time after this one step here. So I'm going to take the edge of my palette knife, and I'm imagining trees kind of about halfway up, a little more halfway up the paper here, and maybe a little meadow kind of down here at the bottom. So I'm just going to start just kind of scratching in these colors onto the paper, and they will kind of start to flow and spread out in that water there. And we can be pretty abstract here, so we don't really need to be super detailed with any of this. I'm just kind of pressing the color in where I want it. And this is kind of starting to form little trees, right? So now I'm out of color on my palette knife, so I'm gonna add a little bit more, probably in the same areas as before. And you do have a little time on this because there's so much water on the paper. It'll take a minute to dry, so you have some time to kind of work with this here. I'm gonna put some down here, like a little meadow, so I'm just using horizontal strokes here. We're gonna leave a little space, just plain. I might go back into these trees and scratch out a few more colors here. Add some dark, like a dark area here with that indigo. Maybe just grab a little bit more indigo. I'm talking my way through this. You shouldn't be like copying me exactly. Just put the colors wherever you want, and it's not going to look like anything yet. This is a big old trust the process kind of technique here. All right, so I think that's all I'm going to do with my palette knife here. So then I'm going to switch to a round brush. This is a Princeton Neptune round brush. And I'm just going to start kind of blending out some of these areas here. So I'm going to maybe take a little bit of this yellow into the sky section here, blend out this. We can add some more water into the trees here. We can also tilt our paper here, so we can kind of start spreading around that water that's on the paper. You could drop more water in some random places like this, and just keep tilting the paper just to make some things happen. I saw a question that said, what do we do without a palette knife? So without a palette knife, you would just be putting in these colors individually with a brush from your palette there. So you're not gonna get the exact same texture, but in the end, it'll turn out about the same as what mine will look like. Okay, so I'm just adding a little bit more water here, just in a few places, and then tilting my paper, letting that blend. You really just want to encourage lots of textures and lots of random little happy accidents happening. So I'm just trying to use my brush to do that. Okay. And then the last step before we overmix anything, once you're happy with how it looks so far, you know, take into account that this is the weird stage. If you want to, you can take a little bit of table salt and just sprinkle that in different areas. The paint still has to be wet for you to do this. So I just like to find some areas where there's wet paint, sprinkle in some salt, and this will give us some really cool textures to work with once it dries. Okay, so I think I'm going to leave it there and just let this settle for a minute. I'll zoom you in here. So it really doesn't look like much right now. And that's the point. We just, we kind of make a mess and then make something out of it once it's dry. Okay, I'm going to go back through these comments here, see if I missed anything because I had to focus. What colors did I use? I used cadmium yellow, sap green, and indigo. Okay, cool. And let me know how this is going for you if you are also painting with me. If you have a minute to type in the chat, let me know. I love the abstract phase. Yeah, me too. I think it's really cool. It always turns out different every time you do it. Even if you use the same colors and the same sort of general technique, it will always turn out differently, so that's kind of fun. How long did this take? We've been at this for 12 minutes or so. I don't think brushes would have the same effect. No, not quite, and that's what I was saying. They won't have exactly the same effect, but you can still do this general technique with the brushes. I don't want it to be something where you just can't do it. I don't want to do something on here that you just can't do without specific tools. What does the salt do? So the salt pulls in the pigment. You can see that texture starting to come out right here where I put the salt first. This cool little spotted texture is because of the salt that I put in there. So that starts to kind of form as the paint dries. And it just creates this really lovely random texture throughout the painting. Yeah. I've done some abstracts with a palette knife. Yeah, I really do enjoy those. I've been doing a lot of these recently. I did well, this one wasn't, was this a palette knife? I don't think I used a palette knife for this one, but these are some abstract ones that I've done recently as well. Similar kind of technique, just with a brush, which have been really fun. I think I might put these on Etsy pretty soon. And yeah, like I showed you, I did a couple in my sketchbook as well. So it's been fun to kind of experiment with the abstract. Since I normally do very realistic landscapes, it's fun to kind of work with abstract landscapes for a little while, just to get a little bit of a break. When's the next one? So I always do these on Saturday at 3. I have not been in a great habit of it recently, but I'm going to try and get to a better habit. So maybe every other weekend I'll do them. So yeah, but it's always at this time. So you can always come check my TikTok. And if I have a live event there in my bio, then you'll know that there's one on Saturday. Yeah, you can see them again. They've got the metallics in the sky and in the land area there. I just did the two kind of, they're slightly different, but same technique, same subject matter. What do I need to follow along? Just watercolor materials, so watercolor paints, paper, a couple of brushes. That's really all. Did you use gel pen? No, I just used, those are watercolors and metallic watercolors in those paintings that I just showed you. Okay, so my paint is drying somewhat slowly, but it's getting there. If you have any other questions, I'll just keep answering questions till we've got some dry paper here. If you have a hairdryer at home and you want to speed up this process a little bit, you can use a hairdryer. I'll just give it another minute or two and then we can get started with the next couple of steps. How long do you need to wait for it to dry? It just depends on how humid it is where you are. It's pretty dry here today, so this isn't taking too long. But if it's humid in where you are, it'll take a while. What brand of watercolor do you use? I use Winsor&Newton most often. I do have a watercolor palette with Artistro that I helped design, which is super exciting. I'll just do a plug now. Since you asked, I designed this watercolor palette with Artistro recently, which is super exciting. So if you want to check this out, feel free to go in my link tree. And I love this palette. I think it turned out really well. I just don't have liquid versions of these colors, so that's why we're using my other brand today. I'll probably switch back and forth with them in different paint and sips. My salt isn't pulling the colors, so you might just have to wait. It shows up most when it's dry. Sorry, there's a motorcycle gang going by. You can see there's salt here, and it's not quite pulling the colors quite as well. So it sometimes just depends on the kind of salt and how wet the paper was when you put it in there. So that's something that you can just experiment with. And thank you all for the likes as well. We're up to 6.7 thousand. That's awesome. If you have time, if you have a minute, just double tap the screen. It helps me out. Sends me likes, and it helps me out with the TikTok algorithm. Thank you for using the Artistro palette. I hope you love it. I'm super proud of it. I hope everybody's happy with it who tried it. And let's see, we're getting pretty dry here, so I'm just going to do my regular plugs that I do while I do these paint and sips. So if you go to the link in my bio, you'll find, first of all, you'll find a pre-order for my watercolor book, which is coming out in April, which is really, really exciting. It is an instructional watercolor book, so if you like these paint and sips and want to learn from me in this kind of style, but just in a book form, if you check out my book pre-order is there, and the book will teach you how to paint a bunch of landscapes. So if you're interested, that would mean a lot to me. If you go check out my book, maybe pre-order it for yourself, you do get some bonus material if you pre-order. My Etsy shop is in my link tree as well, so if you want to check out some of the paintings that I sell, make sure you check that out as well. And my Patreon is in my bio. I do exclusive art tutorials on Patreon once a month. So if you want to join that, it is fairly cheap. If you just want the tutorial is $3.50 a month. So you're just supporting me for basically a cheap cup of coffee, and you get a tutorial out of it. And then, yes, my book will be distributed internationally. And isn't there a book included with your palette? There is, no, there is a couple of tutorials included with the watercolor palette that I was talking about. And there's some paper and a couple of brushes, but no book. Okay, and then the last thing is, if you want to leave me a tip or a gift for today's lesson, you're always welcome to do that. If you click on the link tree and scroll down, there's a thing called tip jar in there, and that just makes it really easy for you to leave a tip if you are so inclined. That is always very welcome, though not necessary. And we do not brush the salt up until it dries. Don't touch it till it's dry. Sometimes it just won't pull up the color, and that's okay. You'll just need to experiment on your own with different types of salt and different kind of dampness of the paper and different colors as well. But the salt will not work with oil. I think I saw that. Salt only works with watercolor. I just opened my gouaches and they dried out. Can they be saved, do you think? Yes. If they are dry, just put them into a palette if you can. Just scrape them off into like a palette like this, and then you should be able to re-wet them and continue to work with them. If they're labeled as acrylic gouaches or acrylic gouache, that will not work. But if they're just regular gouache, that will work fine. Okay, I'm going to just hit this with a hairdryer super quick so that we can kind of move on. I've just got a couple little damp spots here, and I apologize for the noise. Sometimes TikTok blurs it out. Hopefully you can still hear me. And thank you so much for the congratulations. I am very proud of the book, and I'm very excited to have it come out soon. And I think that's everything in my bio. Basically, just check out my link tree if you want to support me in any way. That is always very appreciated. You guys are the best, and I appreciate you joining me for a paint and sip. Thank you so much. Oh, I'm glad you love the palette. That makes me happy. Oh yeah, the watercolor palette that I was talking about, the one with Artistro, is also available in my link tree. The third link in there will take you to it on Amazon. But that is only available in the US. Okay, here we are. Just pre-ordered your book. Thank you so much. Appreciate it so, so much. So I'm just gonna brush off lightly with my finger that extra salt here. Oh, there's some couple of spots that are not completely dry, so we're just gonna skip over those. Okay. And now I'm going to switch back to my brushes and my watercolor palette that looks like this. Yes, this will be posted on YouTube later. So let's see, let's put a little more water in each of these colors that we're using here. So cadmium yellow, sap green, and indigo. And now what we're gonna do is kind of try to identify what this is, what all of these shapes are. And so I think these are gonna be trees, these two shapes here. I think this is gonna be a bit of a meadow. We might add a little bit more grass texture here, and maybe some flowers and stuff. Maybe this like salt texture here is a cluster of flowers. I don't know. We're just gonna kind of work with it and see what happens. So I'm just gonna start at the top here and work my way down. I'm gonna start with like a really light green, combining the yellow and the green color, and maybe just add a few little like leaf details up here. Nothing super detailed. We don't want to kill this thing with details. We just want to kind of add a little bit of texture and like a little bit of context, I should say. And so I'm going to give you some options. I'm going to kind of talk through what I'm doing, but you should also just take a look at how your painting turned out, because it for sure looks different than mine. And just kind of see if you can determine some of the things that you can do to sort of add that texture and that detail to your own painting individually. Okay, so I just mixed up a slightly darker green, and I'm just going to fill in this area here. So we've just got some little leaf textures up there. I'll probably do the same thing over here. So just adding little clusters of leaves up here. We can always blend that out with a clean, damp brush as well if you want to just soften those brush strokes. Then we can switch to a slightly darker green, and maybe this light texture that I got from the salt is like a different tree kind of standing out, so I'll kind of paint around it here. I don't know, there you go. So now that one kind of stands out. We can do the same thing down here, putting some light color behind this light area here. Putting some dark color behind the light area, I should say. Yes, you should brush the salt off. Sometimes I miss some, but you should brush the salt off before you start painting. We'll add some down here. And then maybe with a very dark bluish green, we can put in like a really nice dark shadow down here. I love the olive green on the Artistro palette. That's one of my favorite colors actually on the palette. Okay, some other things. We can add some tree trunks here, which is actually kind of one of my favorite things to add. So I'm just going to use that dark indigo color and maybe add some tree trunks. You can kind of make the lines skip a little bit. That'll look like there's leaves and branches in front. We can add maybe one going this way, and then just thicken that up at the bottom. Then you can always add some little branches. Something like that. How are you deciding where the light is? So this side kind of turned out a little bit darker than this side, if you can see that. So I kind of imagine the light's coming from this direction, maybe a little bit behind, a little bit backlit, because this area is so light here. Yeah, that's kind of how I've decided that. I'm so sorry for the cars going by. Okay, I'll add maybe another tree trunk here, so that those branches have some friends. Okay. I don't think it's really Bob Ross style. I've seen a lot of people say that. I don't think it's really his style necessarily. He was really not as abstract as this. But I understand what you're saying. Okay, so I'm using a lighter green now, and then adding some tree trunks back here. Just having it be a little bit lighter will push it into the distance a little bit. So I can add a few little kind of trees back here with that lighter green, and it'll just be pushed back. Okay. Another option, you can always use the side of your brush and just kind of push upward, and that'll give you like some little grass textures there. That's kind of a fun little texture to use. I saw someone say this kind of looked like a stream, so maybe we'll turn that into a little stream. And I can just kind of show you how to do that. Okay, on this side, I'm going to add definitely some tree branches over here. And we just don't want to ruin it with details here. So we're just going to add enough detail to suggest the context, like I was saying before, but not enough to really like overdo it, if that makes sense. So I'm just kind of doing this quickly, and you can always add more, but you can't really add less. So just stick with a little bit less for now. And then as we go, you can always come back, and if it needs more explaining, you can add more detail. I like how this texture kind of turned out like tree branches as well. This that spider web detail there. I don't know how that turned out. I don't know how that came there, but it's kind of fun. I missed the start. So this will be uploaded on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, later today or early tomorrow. So if you would like to catch up with it, you are totally able to, just in a little while. Okay, so we're gonna add some little grass textures here. And let's see how we're gonna do this stream here with only the 3 colors. This is also a good practice in using just 3 colors, and you just gotta make it work with whatever you got. So I'm gonna use the dark indigo and just kind of come up with a little bit of a stream bed here. So I'm just kind of scraping this along where I feel like that edge of the water would be. So something like that. We can add a few spots where it's a little bit thicker. And then use that upward technique to add some grass. Just trust the process here, trust me. I think this will turn out okay. But you might not be trusting me yet. That's okay. Just rough that up a little bit. Okay, and then we'll switch to a lighter green. And we'll keep adding to this little riverbank here. This will be fun if I can really pull this off. I wasn't planning on doing this, so we'll see how this goes. Okay, so that's the edge of the riverbank there. Trust the process, exactly. And then on the other side, where we can't really see the riverbank as much, maybe we can see a couple little spots of it, like here. Maybe like right there, I don't know. Here, we're gonna add more grass texture. So we're just gonna add some little grassies here. Yes, this will be on YouTube for sure, either later today or tomorrow. So you'll be able to watch it there. Thank you all for answering. I appreciate it. Okay, I've been talking a little bit over all of this. How's everybody doing? If you're painting along with me, please give me a status update on how it's going for you. If you have any questions, I don't want to leave you behind while I attempt to turn this into a riverbank here, so tell me how you are. Not good. This is where I should stop. Is it too soon? No, absolutely not. If you are feeling like you should stop, absolutely stop. You should always trust that voice that tells you that. Not great. Trying though. Fair enough. Again, this does take practice, and this is just meant to be like a little experiment. This is absolutely not necessarily meant to be photorealistic. It is meant to just be something that you try out for fun, and I hope even if your painting didn't turn out quite right, or you just aren't a huge fan of it, that you enjoyed like giving it a shot. If that makes sense. Nope, we did this in 40 minutes. Thank you. What color are you using for the darkest bits? I'm using the indigo color. So the really nice dark color. Okay, I think what's going to help this stream is if we put a little water texture in there. So I'm going to use a dry brush technique and just scrape in some texture with like a muted green. And maybe we could put like a reflection in there too, that might help. Mine doesn't look like a river trees, but it's fun to do. Amen. That's all that matters, really. Okay, so let's see if getting a little reflection in here will help. I don't know, this could just confuse the issue, but we'll find out, I suppose. Mm-hmm. Can you explain the dry brush technique? Absolutely. So if you're painting water, this is the best, it's the best technique for water that I know of. So you're gonna get whatever color you're using onto a brush, and then you're gonna take off a little bit of it on a paper towel, so you just have a little bit left, and then using the side of the brush, you're gonna scrape it onto the paper, usually in a horizontal direction. And that will give you this sort of texture where the paint breaks over the texture of the paper. And you can use that for any color, whatever color you're kind of using in your painting, it'll work for that. So I do really enjoy that technique for painting water. Okay, is this starting to look like a river here? Am I doing the right thing? I don't know. It's a fun little challenge for me. Is your video recorded on any social network? It'll be on YouTube later. Okay, cool. I feel like the reflection here really helped. It's not going to be photorealistic. It's just what it's going to be. I'm going to add a little bit more grass down here, but I don't want to overdo it on the grass texture, just because I've already got quite a bit of it up there. Reflection should be lighter, question mark. I think they should be about the same color. Let's see, honestly, I think they might need to be darker, but I'm not going to worry about that. I don't need it to look perfectly photorealistic. The whole point of this is just for it to look like close enough to reality that the viewer sort of fills in everything else, but you still have that expressive feeling of, you know, watercolor in the painting. So, and I have a hard time with this because I am a realistic artist, and so my instinct in all of my practice is to continue adding detail until it looks almost like a photograph. And that is not what we're doing today. So I gotta just, these are good exercises for me as well, to sort of let go of that feeling and simply just paint and throw in the color. And because I have a lot of training in realistic paintings, it will still kind of end up realistic, but that is just kind of a byproduct of what I do for a living, if that makes sense. Okay, I think I might just call it good here, question mark. How's everybody else doing? What's the status update from everybody else? Less is more, absolutely. Although I don't know, this one kind of turned out into a more is more kind of situation, but that's okay. I like the little, I like the stream. That was a good idea, whoever suggested that, because there's a lot of kind of empty space down here, so that took up a good amount of space. Trying to get motivated to paint. I agree. I really enjoy little challenges like this one. It doesn't have to be exactly this one, but just little challenges that like push you out of your comfort zone on painting, just because it just takes all the pressure off. You're just doing a challenge instead of sitting down to paint, if that makes sense. So I do recommend little challenges like this if you're feeling some artist block. I like to do timed challenges, so I'll just give myself like 20 minutes, and whatever I can paint in 20 minutes, that's what I paint. Stuff like that. This video will be on my YouTube channel later. It's too long for TikTok. Do you do super beginner stuff? Yes, my TikTok has some beginner videos. And the book will have, it's a little bit more advanced, the book, but it's perfectly doable for beginners. You'll just, there's a little steeper learning curve, but you'll certainly be able to do it. Okay, as I go ahead and take the tape off here, which you all get to enjoy, because that's always the best part, I'm going to do my shameless plugs one more time. I appreciate you all being here. In my link tree in my bio, you'll find many things. First of all, you'll find the pre-order to my watercolor book. It would mean so much to me if you at least just check out the link tree for the watercolor book. And if you want to pre-order it, you can. You will get some bonus material for pre-ordering, so that is your little incentive. You'll get 3 extra tutorials, and it'll just mean a lot to me. And if you like this paint and sip, it's exactly the same as paint and sip, just in a written book form. So you'll get to learn how to paint some landscapes from me and do it at your own pace. You'll also find my Etsy shop in my link tree. If you want to check out the art that I sell, that would mean a lot to me as well. That's how I make my living. So if you want to support me financially, that's a great way to do that. I've got bookmarks, postcards, prints, original paintings, stickers, all that kind of stuff. So check out my Etsy shop. It's great for gifts as well. I've got my Patreon in my Etsy shop, or Patreon in my link tree. So if you if you want an extra tutorial just like this one every month, you can join my Patreon. You can also join and get some free art from me every month. That's an option for you as well. And then my YouTube channel is in my link tree, so you can find my YouTube. Subscribe to me, please, and then you'll see this tutorial go up later today or tomorrow. And grab the watercolor palette that I've worked on with Artistro. I'm super proud of it, and I think you'll love it too. So if you're in the market for a new watercolor palette, I do highly recommend this one. This one's the 3rd link in my link tree. You'll find that there. And yeah, if you'd like to leave me a tip or a gift, that is always super, super appreciated. I do these for free, and so if you want to tip me, that is always very, very welcome. You can use the tip jar thing in the link tree. If you scroll to the bottom, you'll find a little app called Tip Jar, and you can tip me that way. That is always super appreciated. And here is that final painting. Remember to sign your painting and put the date on it so that you're